"Move, old lady," he sneered. Seconds later, entire flight canceled. He did not ask. He did not wait. He grabbed the elderly woman's arm, right there in front of everyone, and yanked her forward so hard, her glasses flew off her face and skidded across the terminal floor. Her handbag hit the ground. Her hands trembled, and he stood over her with his jaw clenched tight, his voice like a blade, and he said it loud enough for the entire gate to hear. I said, "Move, old lady. That seat is mine." Not one person stood up. Not one voice rose. The passengers watched an elderly woman get manhandled over a chair and said absolutely nothing. That silence lingered. Then it cost one man everything. If you are new to this channel, welcome. Hit that subscribe button right now and turn on your notifications so you never miss a story. And drop a comment below telling me what city you are watching from. I love seeing just how far these stories travel. Now, let us get into it, because what happened next in that airport is something none of those passengers will ever forget for the rest of their lives. The morning had already been a disaster before Brent Langley ever set foot inside the gate area of O'Hare International Airport. His flight to New York had been delayed multiple times. The gate area was packed. Every single chair was taken. People sat on the floor with their backs against the walls, their carry-on bags stacked between their knees, their eyes either glued to their phones or staring blankly at the departures board, as if staring long enough might force the numbers to change. The overhead speakers crackled every few minutes with updates that said absolutely nothing useful. We apologize for the inconvenience and appreciate your patience. The airline's polished way of saying absolutely nothing while making you feel like you were being helped. Brent had been on the phone since he walked through security. One call ended and another began before he even had the chance to lower his arm. His voice was loud and clipped, the voice of a man who had spent so many years talking over other people in conference rooms that he had simply forgotten what a normal indoor volume sounded like. "No, listen to me," he said into the phone, cutting off whoever was on the other end. "I don't care what Morrison said. Morrison doesn't know what he's talking about. Pull the contracts and call me back soon." He ended the call without a goodbye. He never said goodbye. He had decided somewhere around his birthday some years back that goodbyes were a waste of time. He was in his mid-40s now and had not changed that opinion once. He scanned the gate area with the practiced eye of a man who always assessed a room for what it could give him. His gaze moved from face to face. The young woman with the baby who was already crying. The college kid sprawled across 2 seats with his headphones on. The man in the business suit, who looked almost as important as Brent, fancied himself. And then his eyes landed on the chair. It was at the end of a row, right next to the floor-to-ceiling window that looked out onto the tarmac. A corner seat, the best seat in the entire gate area because it had open space on the left, natural light, and enough distance from the crying baby that you could still hear yourself think. It was, in Brent's estimation, exactly the kind of seat that a man like him deserved. The problem was that someone was already sitting in it. She was old. That was the first thing Brent noticed, and the only thing that registered in any meaningful way. Old and small, and wearing a pale blue scarf tied loosely over white hair. She had a handbag on her lap, the old-fashioned kind, stiff and structured, the kind women carried in the 1960s, and she was holding it with both hands as though it might try to escape. Her eyes were tired. The skin around them was soft and creased, the kind of lines that come from a lifetime of expression, of laughing and crying and squinting into sunlight. She had a slight tremor in her left hand, barely noticeable unless you were looking. And Brent was not looking. Not really, not at her as a person. He was looking at her as an obstacle. He walked over and stood directly in front of her. She did not look up at first. She was staring at the departures board with the same quiet focus that all the other passengers had. That mix of hope and resignation that delays produce in people who have no choice but to wait. "Hey," Brent said it the way you say it to a dog you were trying to shoo out of a doorway. Not cruel exactly, just completely indifferent to the fact that there was a human being attached to the word. She looked up slowly. Her eyes were blue-gray, the kind of pale that can look either watery or sharp, depending on the light. Right now, in the flat fluorescent glare of the terminal, they looked sharp. "This seat," Brent said, gesturing at the chair she was sitting in, as if she might have missed the fact that it was directly beneath her. "I need it." There was a pause, just a breath of one. "I'm sorry," she said. Her voice was soft but clear, the voice of a woman who had spent years using exactly the right amount of volume for exactly the right situation. "I said, I need this seat." Brent shifted his carry-on from one hand to the other. "I've got calls to make. I need the corner. It's quieter over here." She looked at him for a moment. Then she looked at the seat beside him, which was empty. And then she looked back at him. "There's an empty seat right there," she said, and she nodded at it gently, the way you might point something out to a child who had missed the obvious answer. Brent's jaw tightened. "I know there's an empty seat right there," he said. "I want this one." She held his gaze. She did not look afraid. She did not look angry. Not yet. She looked something closer to patient, the kind of patient that is not the same as passive. The kind that has been earned through decades of dealing with difficult people and choosing again and again not to let them win. "I've been sitting here for some time," she said. "I'm not moving." And there it was. 4 words, quiet as a held breath, but they landed like a door being slammed shut. Brent Langley was not used to being told no. Not by his staff, not by his vendors, not by the contractors who built his 3 investment properties, not by the restaurants where he always managed to get the table by the window. Even when the hostess said there were no tables available, he had built his entire adult life on the premise that persistence, his particular brand of loud, relentless, entitled persistence, could move any obstacle. He had tested this theory many times. It had never failed him. He leaned down slightly, bringing his face closer to hers, and when he spoke again, his voice had dropped into something lower and more deliberate. "Look," he said, "I don't think you understand how this works. I've had a very long morning. I need a specific kind of environment to make my calls. You are sitting in that environment. You can either move voluntarily, or I can speak to someone at the desk and have them ask you to move. Your choice." The woman did not flinch. She did not pull back. She looked up at him with those pale, sharp eyes and said very calmly, "Then go speak to someone at the desk." The gate area had gone very quiet. Not completely quiet. There was still the baby crying somewhere, still the low murmur of conversations on the far side of the room, still the static crackle of the overhead speakers. But the people closest to them had stopped what they were doing. A man lowered his newspaper. A woman pulled one earbud out. A teenager looked up from his phone and then looked at the person next to him with wide eyes. The kind of silence that gathers around a confrontation the way weather gathers before a storm. That particular human stillness that says, "We are watching this, even if we are pretending not to. Brent straightened up. He looked around at the faces turned toward him. He read them the way he always read rooms, assessing, calculating. And what he read was not hostility exactly. It was weariness. People were watching, but nobody was going to step in. Nobody ever stepped in. That was the one consistent truth Brent had learned about public confrontations. The audience always stayed in the audience. He set his carry-on down on the floor with a sharp click and walked to the gate desk. There were 2 agents behind the counter. One was handling a passenger at the far end, her head bent over a keyboard, her lips moving as she typed. The other, a young man with a neat collar and a practiced, neutral expression, looked up as Brent approached. "I need to report a problem," Brent said. "Of course, sir. What can I help you with?" "There's a woman, an elderly woman. End of the row over there. She's occupying a seat that I need. I've asked her politely to move, and she's refused." The agent looked in the direction Brent was pointing. His expression did not change, but something behind his eyes shifted slightly. The microsecond recalibration of someone who has worked customer service long enough to recognize the exact flavor of complaint he is dealing with. "Sir," the agent said carefully, "the seating in the gate area is open seating. We're not able to ask a passenger to—" "I understand it's open seating," Brent said. "I'm not asking for assigned seating. I'm asking you to ask that woman to move because she is being unreasonable, and I need to make business calls, and I need that specific location. Sir, I understand your frustration." "Do you?" Brent interrupted. "Because my flight has been delayed multiple times. I have a board meeting in New York soon, and I am standing here asking you to do something very simple. Are you telling me you can't do something very simple?" The agent's jaw moved slightly, like someone biting down on the inside of his cheek. "I'm telling you that we don't have the authority to ask a passenger to vacate their seat in the general waiting area, sir." Brent stared at him. Then he pulled out his phone. "Fine," he said. "I'll call the head office." He walked away from the desk and dialed a number from his contacts. Not the airline's customer service line, but a direct number he had stored from a previous complaint. One he had escalated all the way to a regional manager some time ago over a baggage issue he felt had been mishandled. He had won that argument. He intended to win this one. Back in the gate area, the passengers who had been watching the exchange at the desk began murmuring to each other in low voices. A woman in her later years, 3 seats down from Vivian, leaned toward the man sitting next to her and said quietly, "Can you believe that?" The man shook his head. "Watched the whole thing. She hasn't moved an inch." "Good for her," the woman said. Vivian could hear them. She did not acknowledge that she could hear them, but the faintest shift passed across her face. Not quite a smile, but something in that direction. She adjusted her grip on her handbag and turned her eyes back to the departures board. Her name was Vivian Ellen Caldwell. She had raised 3 children in a farmhouse outside of Cedar Falls, Iowa, had buried a husband some years ago, had driven herself to every single one of her chemotherapy appointments a few years back because she had not wanted to make a fuss. And she had outlasted every single one of the doctors who had given her a probability number and a sympathetic tilt of their heads. She was traveling to New York today because her youngest granddaughter was graduating from Columbia University soon. And Vivian had promised she would be there if she had to crawl. She was not crawling. She was sitting in a chair that she had earned by arriving early and waiting quietly. And she was not going to be moved by a man with a leather carry-on and a loud voice. She had met men like Brent Langley before. She had been meeting them her whole life. They came in different suits and different decades, but they all had the same look. That particular brand of certainty that comes not from having earned anything, but from having never once been told clearly and firmly that the world did not owe them what they thought it did. Brent was still on the phone. His voice had gotten louder. He was now pacing in a tight line near the windows, his free hand cutting through the air as he spoke. "I don't care what the gate protocol is," he was saying. "I want to speak to whoever is responsible for this terminal. There is a passenger here who is being, yes, disruptive. She's refusing a reasonable request. I need someone with actual authority to—" He stopped, listened. His face shifted. "What do you mean you can't escalate this right now?" he said. "Do you know who I am?" There was a pause as whoever was on the other end of the line answered that question. Brent's face darkened. "Fine," he said. "Fine, I'll handle it myself." He ended the call. He stood still for a moment, the particular stillness of a man who was deciding whether to back down or push forward, calculating the odds, measuring the cost. And then he walked back across the gate area toward Vivian's seat. He stood in front of her again. This time, he did not lean down. He stood straight, hands at his sides, and when he spoke, his voice was low and tight in a way that was somehow more menacing than when it had been loud. "Last chance," he said. "Move now." Vivian looked up at him, and then she did something that nobody in that gate area expected. She smiled, not a wide smile, not a mocking smile, just a small, steady, undefeated smile, the kind that says, "I have seen worse than you, and I am still here." "No," she said. The woman 3 seats down actually gasped. Brent's face went the color of old brick. His hand gripped the strap of his carry-on so hard his knuckles whitened. For a moment, just a fraction of a moment, something passed through his expression that was neither anger nor calculation, something raw and less controlled. "You think this is funny," he said. "I think," Vivian said carefully and clearly, "that you are making a very large scene over a very small thing, and I think that if you had been raised differently, you would be embarrassed right now." The gate area went completely still. The words landed like a flat stone, dropped into still water. No splash, just the rings spreading outward, slow and inevitable. Brent's mouth opened, then closed, then opened again. "You," he started. "I raised 3 children," Vivian said, her voice still that same quiet, unhurried thing. "And I'll tell you what I told every one of them when they acted like this. Sit down, take a breath. The world is not going to end because you didn't get what you wanted." Someone in the gate area, nobody could later say exactly who, let out a single involuntary sound halfway between a laugh and a breath. It was the kind of sound that once it starts can cascade. And it did, just slightly, just enough that the edges of the silence broke and you could feel the room shifting. The way a crowd shifts when the momentum changes, when the person who was winning suddenly isn't. Brent heard it. And something in him, in the very controlled and calculated machine of him, slipped. "Don't tell me how to behave," he said, and his voice was loud again, now too loud. And he took 1 step forward. And that step, that single step, was what changed everything. Because standing 3 rows back, leaning against the wall near the service corridor, with his arms crossed and his pilot's uniform neat and precise, was a man who had been watching since the moment Brent walked up to the gate desk. Captain Reed Harlan had been flying for United Airlines for many years. He had handled engine failures, emergency landings, passengers having medical crises at altitude. He had a calm that was not the absence of feeling, but the mastery of it. The particular composure of someone who had learned long ago that the moment you let a situation control you, instead of the other way around, people got hurt. He had been listening to Brent Langley for some time. He uncrossed his arms. He walked forward. He stepped into the open space between Brent and Vivian. Not rushing, not dramatic, just steady and deliberate. The way a man steps into a space he has decided belongs to him now. He was not a large man. Medium height, silver at the temples, reading glasses clipped to his front pocket. But he had the kind of presence that does not depend on size. "Sir," Captain Harlan said. Brent turned. He registered the uniform. Something crossed his face. Not deference exactly, but a slight recalibration. Pilot, authority, someone worth adjusting the volume for. "Captain," Brent said, and the word had a thin veneer of respect over something that was still tight and coiled. "I hope you can help me here. I've been trying to get—" "I heard," the captain said. "I've been standing over there. I heard most of it." Brent paused. "Then you know what I've been dealing with." Captain Harlan looked at him for a moment. Then he looked at Vivian. His expression, when it turned toward her, softened by exactly 1 degree, just enough to be visible. "Ma'am," he said, "I'm sorry you've had to sit through this." Vivian nodded once. "Thank you." Brent's eyes narrowed. "Excuse me, you're apologizing to her. She's the one who—" "Mister?" The captain stopped. "I'm sorry I didn't catch your name." "Langley. Brent Langley." "Mr. Langley." Captain Harlan turned back to him, and his voice was the same calm and even thing. Not warm, not cold, simply unyielding. "I need to ask you to take a step back right now." "I'm not going to." "That wasn't a suggestion," the captain said. "Take a step back." The gate area was so quiet that the sound of the baby crying on the far side seemed to come from a different world entirely. Brent stared at the captain. The captain looked back at him. Steady. Absolute. The eyes of a man who has had this exact conversation in various forms for many years and has never once blinked first. Brent took a step back. It was small, barely noticeable, but the room noticed it. The captain reached up and pressed the small radio clipped near his collar. He spoke into it quietly, just a few words, too low for the passengers to hear. Then he lowered his hand and looked at Brent Langley with the particular expression of a man who has just made a decision and is entirely at peace with it. "Mr. Langley," he said, "I'd like you to come with me to the desk, please." Brent straightened. "I'm not going anywhere until—" "Mr. Langley," the captain said it again. Same tone, same unblinking patience. "Right now, please." And there was something in that please, in the specific weight of it, the way it was not really a please at all, but rather the final warning before something shifts permanently, that even Brent Langley could not argue with. He picked up his carry-on. He looked at Vivian one last time. She was not looking at him. She had turned her eyes back to the departures board, her handbag still in her lap, her left hand still trembling, its barely there tremble. He followed the captain toward the desk. Nobody in the gate area spoke, but as Brent's back turned, as he walked away with the captain at his side, a woman in her later years turned to the man beside her and said softly but clearly, "You think that's the end of it?" The man shook his head. "No," he said, "I really don't." He was right, because what none of them knew yet, what Brent Langley had no idea was coming, was that Captain Reed Harlan had not pressed that radio to summon security. He had pressed it to speak directly to the tower. and the tower had patched him through to the airline's duty manager. And the duty manager, after a brief conversation that Brent was not a part of, had made a call of his own. The overhead speaker crackled. The gate area stirred, and then the voice came through, flat and professional and absolutely unmistakably final. Attention passengers at Gate 14. United flight to New York LaGuardia has been canceled. All passengers, please proceed to the customer service desk for rebooking. We apologize for the inconvenience. The gate area erupted and Brent Langley stood at the front desk with his hand on his carry-on and his face the color of a man who has just realized for possibly the first time in his adult life that he has made a catastrophic and irreversible mistake. The announcement had not even finished playing when the gate area broke open. People moved at once. Chairs scraped, bags were grabbed, voices collided into each other in that particular chaos that only airports produce. That specific brand of panic that happens when people who were already exhausted and already frustrated suddenly lose the one thing they had been clinging to. The departure time on the board, the illusion that they were still going somewhere. What do you mean canceled? They can't just cancel it. I have a connection in LaGuardia. This is unbelievable. This is absolutely unbelievable. Brent stood at the front of the crowd and did not move. His carry-on was at his feet. His phone was in his hand, but he had forgotten he was holding it. His face had gone through different colors in quick succession. Red, then something close to white, and now settling into a gray that did not suit him at all. The gate agent, the young man with the neat collar and the practiced expression, was no longer looking at Brent. He was facing the crowd, both hands raised slightly, palms out, the universal gesture of a man who is attempting to hold back a tide with his bare hands. "If everyone could just form a line," he said, and even he did not sound like he believed that was going to happen. It did not happen. Captain Harlan had stepped to the side. He was standing near the service corridor door, arms at his sides, watching, not the crowd. Brent. He was watching Brent the way you watch a fire you have just put out. Not because you think it is going to restart, but because you want to be absolutely certain. Brent turned toward him. "You did this," he said. His voice was low, controlled barely. The kind of control that is 1 degree away from not being controlled at all. Captain Harlan looked at him. "The flight was canceled due to a disruptive passenger," the captain said. "That is airline protocol. It is not a decision I made personally. It is a decision the duty manager made based on the situation as it was reported." "You reported it," Brent said. "You walked over there, and you reported it." "I did," the captain said. "Yes." Brent stared at him. His jaw was working like he was chewing on words and deciding which ones to spit out first. "Do you know what you just did? Do you understand what this costs me? I have a board meeting soon. There are people sitting in a room in New York waiting for me." "Yes, sir," the captain said. "I understand the inconvenience." Inconvenience. The word came out like something sharp. This is not an inconvenience. This is a catastrophe. You have no idea what you've done, Mr. Langley. The captain's voice did not change. Not in volume, not in pace, not by a single degree of warmth or coldness. "What I did was respond to a situation in which a passenger was physically aggressive toward an elderly woman in a public terminal. I want you to understand that clearly. That is what happened. That is what was reported." The word physically landed like a stone in a still pond. Brent blinked. I grabbed her arm. "I was trying to—" "You grabbed her," the captain said, "in a public terminal in front of witnesses." Brent's mouth closed. The woman 3 rows back. Her name was Sharon. She had been watching everything since the moment Brent first walked up to Vivian, nudged the man beside her. "He knows he's in trouble now," she whispered. "Look at his face." Her husband, a quiet man named Raymond, who had not said many words since they arrived at the airport, nodded once. "He should have walked away earlier," he said just as quietly. But men like that never do. Brent had turned away from the captain. He was looking at his phone again, scrolling with his thumb, fast and jerky, the movements of a man trying to find a lever he can pull. He found a number and pressed it to his ear. "Wesley," he said the moment someone picked up. "Brent, I need you to call Thompson at the airline's executive office. I don't care what time it is in New York. Wake them up if you have to. I am standing in O'Hare and they just canceled my flight because of... it doesn't matter why. I need you to find me a seat on anything going to New York soon. Delta, American, I don't care. Business class. Call me back soon." He paused. "And Wesley, tell Thompson that United just made a very serious customer relations error. Make sure he understands what I mean by that." He hung up. He turned back to the crowd, now pressing against the gate desk, watching the line that had somehow formed despite the chaos, or rather, not a line exactly, more like a compressed knot of frustrated passengers, all angling for the same limited space in front of the 2 agents who were now typing furiously and speaking in the calm, rehearsed tones of people who had done this before and would do it again. And then he saw Vivian. She was not in the line. She was not pressed against the desk, or waving her boarding pass, or leaning over someone's shoulder to read the screen. She was sitting still in the same chair, her handbag back in her lap where it belonged. Her glasses. One of the gate agents had quietly retrieved them from the floor and brought them to her while the crowd surged. She was sitting there as if the world had not just been turned upside down around her. Brent walked toward her. This time, Sharon, the woman 3 rows down, stood up. She was not a large woman. She was in her later years with short silver hair and a Midwest face that was more sharp than soft. The kind of face that had not spent those years being pushed around. She stepped into the open space between Brent and Vivian before he was halfway there. "I think," she said, "that you've said enough to her." Brent stopped. He looked at Sharon the way he had looked at the gate agent, assessing, recalibrating, and found, to what appeared to be genuine surprise, someone who was not going to move. "This doesn't involve you," he said. "She's sitting right next to me," Sharon said. "That makes it my business." "Lady, my name is Sharon," she said, and there was something in the plainness of it, the complete absence of apology or hedging that made it hit harder than anything elaborate could have. "And you are not getting anywhere near her again. Are we clear?" Brent looked at her. He looked past her at Vivian, who had tilted her head slightly to one side and was watching the exchange with those pale, sharp eyes. He looked at the people around them, the ones who had quietly stopped what they were doing to watch again. The audience reassembled, and he did the calculation he always did, and for the first time in a very long time, the calculation did not come out in his favor. He looked back at Sharon. "Move," he said, but the word had lost something. The certainty had leaked out of it somewhere in the last few minutes, and what was left sounded less like a command and more like a habit. Sharon crossed her arms. "No," she said. The word sat between them. And then, from somewhere in the crowd behind Brent, a man said clearly and without particular heat, "Just leave her alone, man." Brent turned. He could not identify who had said it. There were too many faces, too many expressions, and none of them looked away when he looked at them. That was different. That was new. Usually, when Brent looked at a crowd, they found somewhere else to look. These people were not finding somewhere else. He turned back, picked up his carry-on, and walked to the far end of the gate area. He sat in a chair by himself, took out his phone, and stared at it as if it were the only real thing in the room. Sharon stood for a moment longer, watching him. Then she turned around and sat back down next to Vivian. "Thank you," Vivian said. "Don't mention it," Sharon said. "My ex-husband was exactly like that. Many years I put up with it. Never again." Vivian looked at her for a moment. "Many years. Every single one," Sharon said. And there was something in her voice. Not bitterness, not quite, but something honest and a little tired and a little proud, all at once. "You stopped putting up with it quickly. I should have taken notes." Vivian made that almost smile again. "Well," she said at her age, "you stop having patience for things that don't deserve it." 2 rows back, a young woman named Sienna, who was traveling alone, had been filming the last few minutes on her phone. Not obviously, the phone was in her lap, angled up, but filming. She watched the screen for a moment. Then she sent the clip to her sister. Soon, it would be somewhere else entirely. But nobody in the gate area knew that yet. The rebooking line was still moving. The 2 gate agents were doing their best, but best was slow. The computer system, as it often did under pressure, was being uncooperative. One agent, the young man Brent had spoken to earlier, whose name tag read Logan, was on a phone call while simultaneously typing, his eyes moving between the screen and the increasingly restless crowd, with the controlled urgency of someone performing surgery in a moving vehicle. A man in his 40s with a red tie and a laptop bag pushed to the front of the line. "I need to know if you can get me on the next flight to JFK," he said loudly. "Sir, if you could wait in the line." "I've been in the line. I've been in the line for some time. I have a connecting flight." "Everyone here has a connecting flight, sir. If you could just—" "I am not everyone," the man said, and his voice had the same metallic edge Brent's had. And Logan, the gate agent, looked at him with an expression that, for just a fraction of a second, was not neutral at all. It was exhausted, deeply and personally exhausted. Before the professional mask came back up. "Sir, I will get to you as soon as I can. Please wait in the line." The man in the red tie stepped back, still muttering, and the line shuffled forward. Vivian had risen from her chair. Sharon looked up. "Where are you going?" "To get in line," Vivian said. "My granddaughter's graduation is soon. I need to find another flight." Sharon got up beside her. "I'll come with you." They joined the back of the line together, side by side. Vivian held her handbag in both hands. Sharon carried her tote bag over one shoulder. They were quiet for a moment, both watching the crowd ahead of them, assessing the distance between themselves and the desk. "Where are you going?" Sharon asked. "New York," Vivian said. "Columbia University graduation, my youngest granddaughter." Sharon's face shifted into something warm. "Oh, that's wonderful. What's she graduating in?" "Law," Vivian said. And there was a very specific kind of pride in the word. Not loud, not performative, the quiet kind that has been sitting in your chest for years and has learned to rest there comfortably because you always knew it would come to this. "She is going to be a remarkable lawyer." Sharon smiled. "She probably already is. Sounds like she comes from someone who knows how to hold their ground." Vivian said nothing, but the almost smile came back. And this time, it was a little fuller. From across the gate area, Brent Langley watched them join the line. He was still in the corner chair, still on his phone, But the call he was on, his assistant Wesley calling back with rebooking options, had produced exactly one viable result: a Delta flight from Terminal 3 that departed soon. Business class. 1 seat left. He should have been relieved. He had a seat. He had a flight. He would miss the beginning of the board meeting, but he could be patched in by phone for the first part and present in person for the vote, which was the only part that actually mattered. He should have been relieved, and he was partially. But underneath the relief, there was something else. Something Brent Langley was not particularly practiced at identifying because he had spent years building a life specifically designed to prevent this particular feeling from surfacing. It was shame. Not quite fully formed, not yet conscious enough to be called that out loud, even to himself, but it was there. And it had the particular ache of something that has been suppressed long enough that when it finally finds the surface, it comes up harder than it should. He looked at Vivian and Sharon standing together in line. He looked at the gate area, at the crowd he had disrupted, at the agents who were working overtime to fix something that had not needed to be broken. He looked at the empty chair where Vivian had been sitting. Someone else was in it now, a teenage boy with headphones who had no idea of its history. And he felt the weight of the last few minutes settle over him in a way he had not expected. His phone buzzed. A text from Wesley. Delta flight confirmed. Gate H7. Depart soon. Have a car pick you up at JFK. Let me know if you need anything else. Brent typed back. Fine, thanks. He stood up. He picked up his carry-on. He stood still for a moment, facing the direction of the rebooking line, facing Vivian and Sharon and the whole patient. Waiting crowd of people his behavior had left stranded here. He did not walk toward them. He had not arrived at the place inside himself where that was possible yet. Maybe he would in some future version of this day that he would replay later tonight in a hotel room with a glass of something expensive in his hand, trying to make sense of how an airport seat had cost him his dignity. But right now, he was not there. He walked toward the terminal exit. He did not look back. He was some distance from the corridor when he heard it. A sound, small at first, a single person clapping, slow, deliberate, not mocking, but real. Then another, then a third, and within the space of moments, the gate area was applauding. Not for him, behind him, at the line, at the place where Vivian stood. He stopped walking. He stood with his back to the room and listened to the sound of the passengers clapping for an elderly woman who had refused to give up her chair. The sound bounced off the terminal walls and came back to him from all directions. He started walking again. He did not stop. Sharon had turned around when the clapping started, surprised, looking at the faces behind her, and she started laughing. A real laugh startled out of her. And then she looked at Vivian. Vivian was not laughing. She was not crying. She was standing straight with her handbag in both hands and her glasses on her face and her left hand doing its small, constant trembling. And she was looking at the space where Brent Langley had been standing, the place he had just vacated. And her expression was the kind that does not translate easily into words. It was not triumph. It was not satisfaction in any simple sense. It was something more complicated and more human. The look of a woman who had spent her life knowing that there was a right way to carry herself through the world and a wrong way, and who had in this particular exhausting delayed morning, in this particular crowded gate, chosen the right way again, even though nobody had made it easy. "Ma'am," said Logan, the gate agent, who had stepped out from behind the desk and was now standing directly in front of her. "Could you come with me to the desk for a moment?" Vivian looked at him. "Am I in trouble?" Logan blinked. Then he shook his head once firmly. "No, ma'am. Absolutely not. I need to look something up for you." She followed him to the desk. Sharon stayed close behind. Logan sat down at his computer. He typed something. He looked at the screen. He typed something else. There was a pause. "Mrs. Caldwell," he said. "Yes?" "We have a flight," he said, "leaving from gate H9 soon, direct to LaGuardia. There is one seat remaining in first class." He paused. "I would like to offer it to you at no additional cost on behalf of the airline." Vivian looked at him. "That isn't necessary." "No," Logan said. "It isn't, but I'd like to do it anyway." There was a silence. "Okay," she said. He printed a boarding pass and handed it to her over the counter. His hand, as it passed the pass to hers, was very steady. His eyes, when they met hers, were direct and a little tired and entirely sincere. "Your granddaughter is going to be very proud of you," he said. Vivian folded the boarding pass and put it in her handbag. "She's the one graduating," she said. "I'm just going to watch." "Still?" Logan said. She nodded. She turned away from the desk. Sharon was right there. "First class," she said. "Well, that man did you a favor accidentally." "Don't tell him that," Vivian said. "It'll only encourage him." Sharon laughed again, that same startled, real laugh, and the two women walked away from the desk together through the noise and the shuffle of the still disrupted gate. None of them, not Vivian, not Sharon, not Logan behind the desk, knew about Sienna's video yet. They did not know that it had been shared many times in the last little while, that it had landed in a group chat called Airport Chaos that had thousands of members, that one of those members had a Twitter account with hundreds of thousands of followers who had already seen the clip and were typing furiously. They did not know that the clip had a title now, given to it by the first person who shared it. "Old lady won't move. Watch what happens next." They did not know that Brent Langley's name was about to become very easy to find on the internet. And they did not know, none of them did, that in a small office, 2 terminals away, a woman named Natalie Quinn, the airline's head of customer experience for the Midwest region, had just watched the full clip twice on her phone, set the phone down on her desk, and picked up her office phone to make a call. The phone rang a few times before someone picked up. "I need you to find out who this passenger is," Natalie said, "the one yelling. And I need to know what he's booked under, what his frequent flyer status is, and whether he has any other flights with us soon." A pause on the other end. "Yes, right now," she said, "and pull the terminal security footage for Gate 14 for the last while. All of it." She hung up. She looked at her phone. She played the clip a third time, watching the moment Brent grabbed Vivian's arm, watching the glasses skid across the floor, watching Vivian's hands shake. She set the phone face down on the desk and sat very still for a moment. Then she stood up, straightened her jacket, and walked out of her office toward the terminal. She had a boarding pass to deliver, and she had a few things to say to a businessman named Brent Langley before he reached his gate. Natalie Quinn moved fast when she had a purpose, and right now, her purpose had a name. She had the security footage pulled up on her tablet before she even left her office. She watched it once more in the elevator. The grab, the glasses, the trembling hands, and by the time the elevator doors opened onto the main terminal corridor, she had already made 3 decisions. The first was about Vivian. The second was about the airline's public response. The third was about Brent Langley personally, and it was the one she intended to deliver herself. She spotted him before he spotted her. He was moving through the terminal with the kind of purposeful stride that men like him used as armor. Fast forward, eyes ahead, body language that said, "I am going somewhere important, and everything between me and that place is an obstacle." He had his phone pressed to his ear again, his carry-on rolled behind him. The wheels loud on the polished floor. Natalie stepped into his path. He saw her at the last second and pulled up short. His eyes went to her badge, to her jacket, to her expression, and she watched him recalibrate in real time, reading her seniority, deciding how to play this. "Mr. Langley," she said. He lowered the phone. "Yes, my name is Natalie Quinn. I'm the head of customer experience for this region." She did not extend her hand. She held her tablet at her side and looked at him with the particular directness of a woman who had spent years in airline management and had long since stopped softening things she did not feel needed. Softening. "I'd like to speak with you for a moment." Brent glanced past her at the corridor that led toward Terminal 3, toward his Delta flight, toward the exit from this entire situation. Then he looked back at her. "I have a flight," he said. "I know," she said. "You have some time. This will take a few minutes." He looked at her for a beat longer. Then he stepped to the side of the corridor and she stepped with him, and they stood together in the moving current of the terminal while the world flowed past on both sides. "I've reviewed the security footage from Gate 14, Natalie said. She turned the tablet toward him. "All of it." He looked at the screen. He looked at his own face on it. He looked at the moment his hand went around Vivian's arm, the way she lurched forward, the glasses leaving her face and hitting the floor. Watching yourself do something is different from remembering doing it. Memory has a way of softening edges, adjusting angles, sliding the frame just slightly so that what you see when you close your eyes is a version of events that your nervous system can tolerate. The security camera had no such mercy. Brent looked at the footage for a few seconds. Then he looked away. "I was frustrated," he said. "The delays, the calls, I grabbed her arm. I didn't mean to." "Mr. Langley," Natalie said, and her voice was the same calm and careful thing it had been since she introduced herself. Not unkind, but absolutely immovable. "I'm not here to discuss what you meant. I'm here to tell you what happened. And what happened is on this footage. What happened is also on a video clip that, as of some time ago, has been shared many times on social media." Brent went very still. "I'm sorry," he said slowly. "What did you say?" "A passenger filmed part of the confrontation," Natalie said. "It's been circulating online. Your face is clearly visible. The incident is clearly visible." She paused. "Your name is not on the clip, but it's on your frequent flyer account, your booking, and your carry-on tag. It won't take long." The color left Brent's face in a single wave, like a tide going out. "Who filmed it?" he said. "That's not information I have access to," she said. "Can you have it taken down?" Natalie looked at him. "Mr. Langley, I don't control the internet." He turned away from her for a second. His hand came up and pressed flat against his mouth. And she watched him stand there and breathe. Watched the processing happen behind his eyes. The board meeting, the video, his name, his company, the faces of people who would see that footage and recognize him. And she gave him exactly the amount of time it deserved, which was not very much. "What do you want from me?" he said. His voice had changed. The edge was still there, but it was underneath something now, buried under a layer of something raw. Fear, maybe, or the early cousin of it. I want to make sure you understand the full picture, Natalie said. United Airlines will be cooperating fully with any investigation related to this incident. The security footage has been preserved. Every staff member who witnessed the confrontation has been asked to submit written accounts. The flight cancellation was authorized and appropriate under our safety and conduct protocols. She let that settle. And I want you to know that Mrs. Caldwell, the woman whose arm you grabbed, has been provided a first-class seat on the next available direct flight to LaGuardia at no additional charge. She will arrive in New York in time for her granddaughter's graduation. Brent closed his eyes for a couple of seconds. Good, he said. The word came out rough, like it had been dragged over something on the way up. I'm glad she'll make it. Natalie studied him. She had done this long enough to know the difference between a man who said the right thing because he meant it, and a man who said it because the situation required it. Right now, watching Brent Langley stand in the middle of O'Hare with his armor in pieces, she was not entirely sure which one she was looking at. Maybe he was not sure either. Is there anything else? He said. One more thing, Natalie said. She reached into the inside pocket of her jacket and produced a card. Not a business card, a plain white card with a handwritten number on it. This is the direct line for our customer relations legal team. I would strongly recommend you contact them before the end of the business day. Not because we're initiating anything formally at this point, but because if this video continues to spread the way it's spreading right now, you are going to want to have gotten ahead of it. She held the card out. He took it. He looked at it. He put it in his jacket pocket without saying anything else. Natalie gave him one last look. Safe travels, Mr. Langley. She turned and walked back in the direction she had come. Brent stood in the middle of the terminal for a full while without moving. Around him, the airport did what airports always do. Kept going, indifferent, relentless, full of its own noise and urgency. A family rushed past him, pulling wheeled suitcases. A gate agent made an announcement over the PA. Someone's coffee cup hit the floor somewhere and burst open. He looked down at the card in his hand. Then he pulled out his phone. He did not call Wesley. He did not call the board. He opened Twitter. It took him moments to find the clip. It had many shares. He put his phone in his pocket. He picked up his carry-on. He walked toward a Terminal 3, and he walked like a man who was carrying something he had not been carrying when he arrived at the airport that morning. Something heavy and unwieldy that he did not yet know how to put down. Back at the gate, Vivian's new boarding pass was in her handbag, and Sharon was helping her navigate toward gate H9. First class, Sharon said again, like she was still savoring it. You know, in all my years of flying, I have never once sat in first class. I've sat in it once, Vivian said. My husband upgraded us on our anniversary. He surprised me at the gate. She paused. He was always doing things like that. Sharon glanced at her. Was he passed? Some years ago, Vivian said. Sharon was quiet for a moment. Then she said, I'm sorry. Don't be, Vivian said, and she meant it in the way you can only mean it when enough time has passed and enough has happened and you have made peace with a thing, not because it stopped hurting, but because you chose to carry it differently. We had a good life, a real one. That's more than most people get. They walked in silence for a moment. Two women in their later years moving through the chaos of O'Hare with a particular unhurried steadiness of people who have stopped letting airports make them feel small. Where are you going? Vivian asked. Originally, I mean before all this. Boston, Sharon said. My daughter. She just had a baby recently, first grandchild, and I've been trying to get there. But Every time I book something, something else comes up." She shook her head. "You'd think the universe was trying to tell me something." "The universe," Vivian said, "probably just wanted you to be in that gate this morning." Sharon looked at her, and then Sharon laughed. That same real laugh, surprised out of her, and Vivian's almost smile turned into something more complete, brief and warm, and entirely genuine. They reached gate H9. The waiting area was quieter than the previous gate had been. Less crowded, the delayed flight energy replaced by the normal pre-boarding hum. A gate agent was arranging paperwork behind the counter. 2 flight attendants were talking in low voices near the jetway door. Vivian sat down. Sharon sat beside her. "You don't have to stay with me," Vivian said. "Your gate must be somewhere else." "Doesn't board for another while," Sharon said. "I'll sit with you until you board." She settled her bag on her lap with the finality of someone who has made a decision. "Besides, I want to hear more about this granddaughter." Vivian smiled, really smiled this time. "Her name is Isabella," she said. "She got into Columbia at a young age, youngest in her class. She called me the night she found out, in the middle of the night, Iowa time, and she was crying so hard I could barely understand her. I said, 'Isabella, honey, slow down.' And she said, 'Grandma, I got in. Vivian stopped for a second. "I cried too. I'm not ashamed of it." Sharon was looking at her with an expression that was soft, in a way her face had not been the whole morning. "She sounds extraordinary." "She worked for every inch of it," Vivian said. "Nobody handed her anything. She waited tables all through undergrad, came home some nights so tired she could barely speak, but she never quit." She paused. "She gets that from her grandfather. I think he was the same way. Once he decided something, that was it. Done. Nothing moved him." "Sounds like it skipped a generation and landed on you too," Sharon said. Vivian was quiet for a moment. "I almost didn't come," she said. Sharon looked at her. "My doctor wanted me to wait. My heart's been unsteady this year. Nothing dramatic, just the kind of thing that makes doctors cautious and makes you want to ignore them entirely. My daughter offered to drive me. My son said I should watch it on video call." She said the last part with a very specific kind of tone, the tone of a woman who has been offered accommodations she found mildly insulting. "Video call to watch my granddaughter graduate from Columbia Law School." "You're kidding," Sharon said. "I told him," Vivian said, "that I have earned the right to sit in that auditorium in person. I told him that I have been in worse shape than this and kept going, and I intend to keep going until I decide to stop. Not before." She adjusted her handbag. "He said he understood." "He didn't understand, but he let me go." Sharon looked at this woman, elderly, left hand trembling, glasses slightly smudged, sitting in an airport after being manhandled and threatened and forced to wait through a canceled flight, and felt something that was not quite admiration, because admiration implies some kind of distance. What she felt was closer to recognition, the specific recognition of a woman seeing another woman who has refused repeatedly and quietly and without applause to be smaller than she is. "Isabella's going to be glad you came," Sharon said. "I know," Vivian said simply. At that moment, Sienna, the young woman who had filmed the clip, walked past the gate on her way to her own gate. She had her phone in her hand. She was staring at the screen with an expression that had gone past, surprised and into something closer to disbelief. The video had many shares. She stopped walking. She stood in the middle of the terminal corridor and read the numbers again and said out loud to nobody in particular, "Oh no!" The man walking behind her had to swerve. He shot her a look. She did not notice. She was reading the comments. There were thousands of them, and they were coming in faster than she could read. Most of them were angry, pointed, specific, the way internet anger gets when a clip gives people something concrete to direct it at. A few were defending Brent. Men mostly, with the flat certainty of people who have never had to hold their ground in a chair while someone twice their size grabbed their arm. But most of them were not. Most of them were Vivian's. "She's my grandmother. She's my mother. She's every woman who ever got pushed around for no reason. Don't mess with grandmas. Don't mess with this one, especially." And then, buried in the thread, a comment that had been liked many times. "Does anyone know who the man is? This needs to be seen by his employer." Sienna sat down in the nearest empty chair. She had not meant for it to be this. She had sent the clip to her sister. That was all she had intended. She had not uploaded it herself. Her sister had. And her sister's account had the kind of reach that Sienna had always found slightly alarming. And now, here they were. She typed a message to her sister. "Did you see the numbers?" Her sister replied quickly. "I know it's everywhere. You okay?" Sienna looked at the screen. She looked at the crowd moving through the terminal around her. All of them going about their separate urgencies. None of them knowing that the footage of a quiet elderly woman refusing to give up an airport chair was being watched right now by people on multiple continents. She typed back, "I think I need to find her." Her sister replied, "What?" Sienna stood up, shouldered her bag, and started walking back the way she had come toward the gate areas. Brent Langley had reached Terminal 3. He had found his gate. He had sat down, opened his laptop, and spent some time staring at a spreadsheet he could not bring himself to actually read. His phone had buzzed multiple times. He had answered none of them. He was thinking about something Wesley had said once some time ago at the end of a long client dinner when everyone else had gone and they were sitting with the last of a bottle of wine. And Wesley, who was the closest thing Brent had to a real friend, had said very quietly, "You know what your problem is, Brent? You got successful before you got human, and now you don't know in which order those things are supposed to go." Brent had laughed it off at the time. He had said something sharp and deflecting, the way he always did with things that came too close. Wesley had let it go, also the way he always did. They had paid the bill and gone home. Brent was thinking about that now. He was thinking about it with a kind of slow, unwilling attention that only comes when circumstances remove every other option, when the next flight is soon, and your laptop shows a spreadsheet you can't read, and your phone has more notifications than you can face, and the security camera footage of yourself doing something you are ashamed of exists somewhere on a server and you cannot delete it. He was thinking about Vivian's glasses hitting the floor. He was thinking about the sound they made. He had not meant to grab her that hard. He genuinely had not. He had meant to take her arm steady and firm. The way you move someone out of a space they're occupying when you have decided you are done arguing. He had done it without thinking about her age, without thinking about her bones, without thinking that she was a person and not an obstacle. He had not thought about any of that. He was beginning to understand, precisely the problem. His phone buzzed again. This time he looked at it. It was not Wesley. It was not his assistant. It was a number he did not recognize. Area code 312. And beneath it, a text message that read, "Mr. Langley, this is Jennifer Wells from the Tribune. We're covering a story about an incident at O'Hare this morning involving a United flight and a passenger dispute. We have you on footage. I'd like to offer you a chance to comment before we publish. Please call me at your earliest convenience." Brent read the message twice. Then, he set the phone face down on his knee, leaned his head back, and closed his eyes. The board meeting he had been racing toward, the contract that needed signing, the people in the room in New York, all of it was still there, still real, still waiting. None of it had gone away, but around it, pressing in from every side, was something that had not been there this morning when he left his house. Something that his particular combination of money and certainty and forward momentum could not push through or around or over. He had grabbed an old woman's arm in an airport over a chair, and the whole world, it seemed, had been watching. He picked up his phone. He scrolled through his contacts until he found the one he was looking for. He pressed call. It rang twice. "Brent," Wesley said. "I've been trying to reach you." "I know," Brent said. "I saw the video." There was a silence on the other end that told him everything he needed to know about how bad it was. "How many shares?" Brent asked. Wesley paused. "Many as of recently." Brent said nothing. "Brent." Wesley's voice was careful, the voice of someone stepping across uncertain ground. "I need to ask you something, and I need you to answer me honestly." "Go ahead." "Did you touch her?" Brent closed his eyes again. Outside his window, a plane was taxiing slowly across the tarmac, unhurried, certain of its direction, taking its time. "Yes," he said. "I grabbed her arm." Another silence. "Okay," Wesley said. "Okay, here's what we're going to do." And across the terminal in the new gate, the boarding announcement for Vivian Caldwell's first-class flight to New York came over the speaker, clean and clear and right on time. She stood up, she smoothed her coat, she picked up her handbag. Sharon stood with her and gave her a look that had no performance in it. Just warmth, direct and uncomplicated, one woman to another. "Give Isabella a hug from a stranger," Sharon said. "I will," Vivian said, "and you go hold that grandbaby." They stood for just a second. These two women who had not known each other earlier in the day, in the middle of a day that had been terrible, and then somehow, unexpectedly had turned into something else entirely. Then Vivian walked toward the jetway, boarding pass in hand, head up, her left hand doing its small, quiet trembling at her side. She did not look back. She never looked back. The first-class cabin smelled like clean air and leather, and something faintly warm that Vivian could not name, but that made her think inexplicably of the inside of her husband's car on winter mornings. That particular combination of heat and quiet that meant you were going somewhere together. She stood in the aisle for a moment before finding her seat, and when she sat down, really sat down, in a chair that had actual room on either side of it and a headrest that met the back of her head at exactly the right height, she let out a breath she had been holding. It felt like since early that morning when her alarm went off in the Cedar Falls Holiday Inn, where she had stayed the night before to be close to the airport. A flight attendant appeared beside her. Young woman, dark hair pulled back, eyes that were professionally warm, but also, Vivian noticed, genuinely kind. There is a difference between the two, and Vivian had always been able to tell them apart. "Mrs. Caldwell," the attendant said, "welcome aboard. Can I get you anything before we push back? Water, orange juice. We also have coffee if you'd like." Vivian looked at her. "How do you know my name?" The attendant smiled. "The gate agent called ahead. He wanted to make sure you were taken care of." She paused. He also said to tell you congratulations for your granddaughter." Vivian was quiet for a moment. She pressed her lips together once, not with sadness, but with the kind of feeling that has no clean name. Gratitude and grief and something sweet, all folded together into a single pressure behind the eyes. "That was very kind of him," she said. "Coffee?" the attendant said gently. "Please," Vivian said. Black. The attendant moved away. Vivian looked out the window at the tarmac, at the ordinary gray light of an O'Hare morning, at the slow mechanical world of ground crews and carts and fuel lines. And she thought about Isabella. She thought about the phone call in the middle of the night, the crying so hard you could barely understand the words. She thought about all the phone calls before that, all the ones that had not been triumphant, the ones where Isabella's voice was flat with exhaustion, the ones where she had called to say she had failed an exam or lost a part-time job or was lying on the floor of her apartment at night, wondering if she was strong enough for this. And Vivian had always said the same thing, not because it was the easiest thing, but because it was the truest. "You are exactly strong enough." "I know because I know you. Now get up." She had always gotten up. The coffee arrived. Vivian wrapped both hands around the cup and held it the way you hold something that is simply uncomplicated good, and let herself be still for the first time all morning. 3 terminals away, Brent Langley was not still. He had been on the phone with Wesley for some time, and in those minutes, the video had crossed many shares. Wesley had pulled the numbers himself. He said them carefully, the way a doctor says a number they know will land badly. "Many," Brent said. "As of right now." "Brent, it's moving fast. It's got legs." "What kind of legs?" "The kind that keep going," Wesley said. "It's on Twitter. It's on Facebook. It's on TikTok now. Somebody cut it with audio. There's a hashtag." Brent stopped walking. He was in the corridor between Terminal 3 and the main hub, standing against the wall with his carry-on beside him and his free hand pressed flat against the back of his neck. "What's the hashtag?" Wesley hesitated. "Brent. It's your name, Brent." The air went out of him in one quiet, controlled exhalation. "Okay," he said. "Okay, who knows?" "I've already gotten 3 calls in the last while," Wesley said. 2 journalists, one from the Tribune, one from somewhere I didn't recognize. "And Brent, I have to tell you this." Harrison called. Harrison Klein, chairman of the board, the man whose meeting Brent had been racing toward since early that morning. "What did he say?" Brent asked. "He said he'd seen the clip. He said he wanted to talk to you before the meeting, not during, before." Wesley paused. He didn't sound angry. He sounded careful, which is worse. Brent knew exactly what Wesley meant. Harrison angry was loud and specific and had a beginning, a middle, and an end. Harrison careful meant he had already made a decision and was working out how to deliver it. "Call him back," Brent said. "Tell him I'll call him from the gate soon." "Brent, tell him soon, Wesley." "I just need to think for a second." He hung up. He stood against the wall and he thought. Not strategically. He was too shaken for strategy right now. But honestly, the way you think when there is no performance left in you, when the audience is gone and it is just you and the facts of what you have done. He had physically grabbed an elderly woman over a seat in a public airport in front of witnesses and at least one camera. He had done it because she would not move. And she would not move because she had been sitting there and she had every right to be sitting there. And he had wanted that specific chair because he was a man who had spent his entire adult life getting the specific thing he wanted through the application of enough force. And this time, the thing he applied force to had been a person. He pushed off the wall and started walking again. He needed to get to his gate. He needed to call Harrison. He needed to figure out soon how to get ahead of something that was already very far ahead of him. His phone buzzed. Not a call, a text from a number he didn't recognize. He almost did not open it, but something made him stop, made him look. The text read, "Mr. Langley, my name is Isabella Caldwell. I am the granddaughter of the woman you assaulted in the gate this morning. I'm a law student at Columbia, and I have been watching the footage of what you did to my grandmother. I want you to know that I have already spoken with 2 attorneys who specialize in personal injury and public assault cases. I am flying from New York to O'Hare right now. Do not leave the country." Brent read it multiple times. His thumb hovered over the screen. He did not reply. He put the phone back in his pocket and kept walking and walking faster now. The carry-on wheels loud behind him. His mind doing the thing it did when real danger appeared. Sharpening, focusing, cutting everything else out. She was bluffing probably. She was a law student, not a lawyer. She was young. She was scared and angry. And she had sent that message from somewhere over the Midwest. And she could not actually stop him from doing anything. But she was also possibly exactly what she said she was. Smart, trained, determined. And if there was one thing Brent understood about legal threats, it was that the ones that arrived through a text from a granddaughter at altitude were not the ones you ignored. They were the ones that became the most expensive surprises of your professional life. He called Wesley back. "I need a lawyer," he said. "I already called one." Wesley said, "Sarah Kim, the best in Chicago for exactly this kind of situation. She's available this afternoon." "Does she know what it's about?" I gave her the broad strokes. And Wesley was quiet for exactly 2 seconds. She said, "Stop talking to people. Don't give statements. Don't call journalists back. Don't post anything. Get on your flight. Get to New York and call her from the car." "There's a text," Brent said, "from the granddaughter." "Don't reply to it," Wesley said immediately. "She says she's flying here." "Brent." Wesley's voice shifted into something flatter and more serious. "Do not reply to that text. Do not attempt to make contact with the family in any form. Get on your plane. That is all you do right now." Brent walked through the Terminal 3 entrance. He found his gate. He sat down in the first available seat. Not the best seat, not the corner seat, just a seat, and he called Harrison. It rang once. "Brent?" Harrison said. "Harrison, I know you saw it." "I did." A pause. "The whole board has seen it by now. It went through the group thread some time ago. I don't know who sent it first." Brent pressed his eyes closed. "I'm sorry you had to." "Brent." Harrison cut him off. Not unkindly, but with the precision of a man who does not have time for preamble. "I'm going to ask you one question, and I need you to answer it honestly. Not the way you answer questions in a room. Honestly. Go ahead. Is this who you are, or is this a bad morning that got away from you?" The question landed like something dropped from a great height. Brent sat with it. The honest answer, the one he had been circling for the last while, was that he did not fully know. He knew who he was in a conference room, who he was across a negotiating table, who he was when there was something to win and a clear path to winning it. He did not know, with any certainty, who he was when he stopped performing all of that. He had not looked closely enough or long enough at that particular question to have a good answer ready. "I don't know," he said. Harrison was quiet. "That's not what I expected you to say," he said. "I know." Another silence, longer this time. "Come to New York," Harrison said. "We'll talk after the meeting, not about the agenda, about you." He paused. "And Brent, do not issue a public statement without running it past me first. The board is watching this. I need time to manage it before it gets any worse." "Understood," Brent said. Harrison hung up. Brent sat in the gate chair and looked at his hands. They were the hands of a man who had built things, a company, a portfolio, a reputation. Each of them constructed through years of work that had been, in its own way, genuinely hard. He had not been handed the life he had. He had fought for it with everything he had. And somewhere in that fighting, in the long accumulation of wins and the learned contempt for anything that tried to slow him down, he had stopped distinguishing between things and people, had stopped asking himself which obstacles deserve to be moved and which ones deserve to be considered. He thought about what Vivian had said to him, not the part about sitting down and taking a breath, the part before that. If you had been raised differently, you would be embarrassed right now. He was embarrassed. It had taken him some time to arrive there, honestly, but he was. The boarding call for his Delta flight came over the speaker. He picked up his carry-on and got in line. In New York, Isabella Caldwell was not, in fact, flying to Chicago. She was sitting in her apartment in Morningside Heights, legs crossed on the floor, laptop open, watching the video for the 6th time. She had sent the text to Brent Langley's number found through a combination of her own resourcefulness and a classmate who worked part-time at a corporate research firm on pure adrenaline before she had thought it through, before she had done anything except watch a man she had never met grab the arm of the woman she loved most in the world. Now she sat with her phone in her lap and her stomach in her throat, and waited to see if he would reply. He didn't. Her roommate Brooke sat on the couch behind her. "Isabella, you okay?" "My grandmother's fine," Isabella said. "She's on the plane." "I know she's fine," Brooke said. "I'm asking about you." Isabella looked at the screen one more time, at her grandmother's hands trembling, at the glasses on the floor, at the way Vivian had looked up at the man who had grabbed her with those pale, sharp eyes, and not once, not for a single second, looked afraid. "She texted me from the gate," Isabella said. "She said she's in first class. She said she is fine, and she will see me at graduation, and she does not want me to do anything dramatic." She paused. "She specifically said, dramatic." "And the text you sent the guy," Brooke said. Isabella was quiet for a moment. "I don't know if I can actually sue him. I'm not a licensed attorney." "I was angry." "Well," Brooke said, "he doesn't know that." Isabella's phone buzzed. Not Brent, a number she recognized. Her Aunt Valerie, her mother's older sister, who had many followers on Facebook, and the particular energy of a woman who had been waiting her entire life for a righteous cause to deploy herself toward. Isabella answered, "Valerie." "Isabella, I shared the video," Valerie said, and her voice had the bright, purposeful quality of someone who has found their moment earlier. "It has many shares from my page alone. I've been tagged in. I've been tagged in news articles. The Tribune called me recently." Isabella closed her eyes. "Valerie, Grandma doesn't want this to be a big thing." "It already is a big thing," Valerie said. "Isabella, your grandmother is elderly, and a man in a suit grabbed her arm over an airport seat. This is not a small thing. This is a statement about how we treat our elders in this country. This is about entitlement and age and... Valerie. Isabella said it firmly. I know. I agree with you. But Grandma gets to decide how this is handled. It's her story. A pause. Have you talked to her? Valerie asked. She's in the air. Isabella said she lands soon. Well, when she lands, Valerie said, you tell her the whole country's behind her. You tell her that. Isabella hung up. She sat very still for a moment. Then she opened her laptop and typed Brent Langley, Chicago into the search bar. The results populated quickly. Brent Langley, founder and CEO of Langley Capital Partners. In his mid-40s. Harvard MBA, net worth estimated at some millions. Offices on South Street, board member of 2 mid-size logistics companies, regular donor to 2 Chicago arts organizations, divorced, no children. Isabella read the bio, then she scrolled down to the news section. The first result was from recently. Tribune Online. The headline read, Chicago executive identified in viral airport video showing altercation with elderly passenger. The second result was from some time ago. A national wire service had picked it up. The third was from recently. A cable news outlet had embedded the video. Isabella sat back. She picked up her phone and called her mother. Her mother, Lauren, answered on the first ring. Have you talked to Grandma? Lauren said. She's in the air, Mom. I know she's in the air. I'm tracking her flight. I've been tracking it since she left Cedar Falls. Isabella, your Aunt Valerie is... I know, Isabella said. I talked to her. This is getting very big very fast, Lauren said. Her voice had the quality of a woman who was trying to stay calm because she knew that not being calm would make things worse, but who was not in any deep sense calm. I'm worried about your grandmother. When she lands and she sees how big this has gotten. Grandma is not going to fall apart over a news story, Isabella said. I know she's not going to fall apart, Lauren said. I'm her daughter. I know exactly how strong she is. I am not worried about her falling apart. I am worried about her being in the middle of something she didn't ask for and having no control over. Isabella stopped because her mother was right. That was the right worry. Not whether Vivian could handle it. She could handle almost anything. The question was whether she should have to. I'm going to go to the airport, Isabella said. When she lands, I'm going to be there. Isabella, her graduation is tomorrow. I know when the graduation is, Mom. I'm the one graduating. She stood up. I'll be there. She shouldn't walk out of the airport into this alone. She hung up. She looked at Brooke. I need to borrow your car, Isabella said. Brooke was already standing up, reaching for her keys. Brent Langley's Delta flight pushed back from the gate soon after. He sat in his business class seat with his seatbelt fastened and his phone still in his hand, reading the Tribune article about himself. The journalist had done it without his comment. A brief fair account, the security camera footage described without embellishment, 3 witness quotes, his name and title, and a line about Langley Capital Partners that linked to the company website. He put his phone in airplane mode. He leaned his head back. The man in the seat next to him was in his 50s, compact and quiet with the relaxed self-containment of a frequent traveler who has learned to create privacy out of nothing. He had a paperback open on his knee, and he was not looking at Brent at all. Brent looked at him for a moment and thought, this man has no idea who I am. He has no idea what I did this morning. He is just a man on a plane reading a book. There had been a time not that long ago when Brent would have found that anonymity maddening. He had spent years constructing a version of himself that was recognizable and important, a name that preceded him into rooms, a presence that changed the temperature of a meeting when he walked in. He had wanted to be known. He had worked to be known. Right now, sitting next to a man who did not know him and did not need to. He felt something he had not expected to feel. He felt relieved. The plane climbed. O'Hare fell away beneath it. Chicago spread out and then contracted and then disappeared into clouds. And Brent Langley sat inside those clouds and did what he had not done in a very long time. He sat and thought honestly about himself, without an audience, without a strategy, without a phone in his hand, or a call to make, or a meeting to prepare for. He thought about the morning. He thought about Vivian. He thought about the glasses on the floor, the sound they made when they skidded across the terminal. He thought about her left hand trembling and how he had not even seen it, had looked at her and processed elderly woman obstacle without ever getting to person at all. He thought about his mother. His mother had been a woman of a certain kind of dignity, the unhurried, unperformative kind that did not require an audience. She had raised him alone after his father left, working 2 jobs, never once complaining in front of him, choosing instead to be simply and consistently present at school plays, at games, at the kitchen table at night when he needed help with history. He had left until the last minute. She had died some years ago, pancreatic cancer. He had been with her at the end in a hospital in Cincinnati, sitting in a plastic chair in the middle of the night, holding her hand while the monitors beeped. And she had looked at him with eyes that were tired and pain-worn, and still somehow the same eyes he had looked into his whole life. And she had said very softly, "Be good, Brent. Just be good. Everything else takes care of itself." He had nodded. He had said, "Yes, Mom." He had meant it. He was not sure, sitting here at altitude with his name trending on the internet, how well he had kept that promise. The seatbelt light clicked off. The man next to him turned a page. Brent opened the window shade and looked out at the flat white world of clouds below. And he thought about what Wesley had said some time ago over that last glass of wine. You got successful before you got human, and now you don't know in which order those things are supposed to go. He had laughed it off then. He was not laughing now. His phone was in airplane mode. The Tribune article was still on the screen, frozen mid-load. The text from Isabella Caldwell, "Do not leave the country," sat unanswered in his messages. He stared at it, and then slowly he opened the text thread. He sat with his thumb over the keyboard for a long moment. Wesley had told him not to reply. Sarah Kim had told him not to reply. Every strategic instinct he had told him not to reply. He typed 3 words. He stared at them. He read them back twice. They were not enough. They were nowhere near enough. They were 3 words against a morning's worth of damage. But they were the truest thing he had written or said or done since he walked into that airport. He pressed send, the message delivered before the plane flew out of range. 3 words. I am sorry. At LaGuardia soon after, an old woman named Vivian Caldwell would walk off a plane into an arrivals terminal where her granddaughter would be standing with both arms already open. Vivian would see Isabella from some distance away, would see the dark hair and the height, so like her grandfather, always so like her grandfather, and something in her chest would release that she had been holding since early that morning, since before that, even since the long, quiet year of heart monitors and careful doctors and children who worried too loudly. She would walk into her granddaughter's arms and hold on, and Isabella would hold back, and neither of them would say anything for a long moment because there was nothing that needed to be said. But that was still some time away. Right now, Vivian was somewhere above the Midwest in a first-class seat with a cup of black coffee going cold in her hand, and her eyes closed and a small smile on her face that the flight attendant passing quietly chose not to disturb. She was thinking about the graduation, about the auditorium, about Isabella's face when she walked across that stage. She was not thinking about Brent Langley at all. Isabella saw her grandmother before Vivian saw her. That was always how it went between them. Isabella had inherited her grandfather's height and his habit of scanning a room from the top down. And Vivian, with her pale blue scarf and her handbag held in both hands, was exactly the kind of person you could miss in a crowd if you were not specifically looking for her. Isabella was always specifically looking for her. She pushed through the edge of the arrivals crowd and called out, "Grandma!" And her voice came out louder than she intended, broken open by hours of fear and relief and the specific ache of watching someone you love get hurt on a screen from many miles away without being able to do a single thing about it. Vivian looked up, and for just 1 second, one unguarded, unperformed second, her face did the thing it only ever did for Isabella. The careful composure dropped away, and underneath it was just love. Enormous and unqualified, the kind that does not negotiate or calculate, the kind that has been there since before you knew what love was. "Isabella," she said. And then Isabella's arms were around her, and Vivian's were around Isabella, and they stood there in the middle of the LaGuardia arrivals terminal, with people streaming past on both sides. And neither of them moved, and neither of them spoke, and it lasted a long time. When they finally separated, Isabella kept her hands on her grandmother's shoulders and looked at her face with the focused attention of someone conducting an inspection they need to pass. "You're okay," Isabella said. It was not quite a question. "I'm fine," Vivian said. "I told you I was fine." "You said you were fine in a text message. That's different from seeing you fine." "I am standing in front of you fine," Vivian said, and her voice had a note of gentle amusement in it. "Does this count?" Isabella looked at her grandmother's left arm at the sleeve of her coat. She reached out and very carefully pushed the fabric back just slightly. And there it was, a bruise already deepening toward purple. 4 finger-shaped marks on the inside of Vivian's forearm. And Isabella went very still when she saw them. "Isabella," Vivian said. "He bruised you?" Isabella said. Her voice had gone quiet in the way that quiet is not the same as calm. "Isabella, look at me." Isabella looked up. "I am here," Vivian said. "I am standing here. I got on the plane. I sat in a very comfortable seat, and I landed in New York in time for my granddaughter's graduation. That is the story. That is the whole story." Isabella breathed. "It's not the whole story." "It is the part that matters," Vivian said, and she pulled her sleeve back down and straightened it with the firm finality of someone closing a chapter. "Now, are we going to stand here in the airport, or are we going to go somewhere and have dinner? Because I have been awake since early this morning, and I would like a meal that does not come in a foil bag." Isabella almost laughed. She wiped her eye once fast, like she was angry at it for the betrayal. "There's a place near campus," she said. "Italian? You'll like it." "Lead the way," Vivian said. They walked together toward the exit, grandmother and granddaughter. The smaller woman's left hand tucked into the younger woman's arm, and the trembling that was always there, always there. The small, persistent reminder of a body doing its honest best, felt to Isabella underneath her fingertips, like the most precious thing she had ever touched. In the car, Isabella's phone kept buzzing. She had put it face down on the center console, but the screen kept lighting up, visible even face down. The glow persistent and demanding. Vivian looked at it. "How bad is it?" Isabella glanced at her. "What do you mean?" "The video," Vivian said. "How far has it gone?" A pause. "Many shares as of some time ago. It's been picked up by 6 news outlets. There's a segment on cable news tonight." Vivian was quiet. "Valerie shared it," Isabella said carefully. Vivian made a sound that was not quite a sigh and not quite a groan, but lived somewhere between the two in the territory of a woman who loves her sister-in-law and has spent years managing her energy. "Of course she did. She means well. Valerie always means well," Vivian said. "The road to chaos is paved with Valerie meaning well." She looked out the window at the New York skyline, at the familiar, dense, beautiful mess of it. "What are people saying?" Isabella hesitated. "Don't protect me from it," Vivian said. "I'm not fragile." "They're angry," Isabella said, "mostly on your behalf. There are some people who are defending him, saying you should have just moved, saying you know how it is online, but most of them are angry. Most of them are talking about how we treat older people, about entitlement, about—" She stopped. "Grandma, it's really big." Vivian said nothing for a moment. She looked at the bruise under her sleeve without looking at it. "The way you are aware of a thing without needing to see it." "What about the man?" She said the businessman. Isabella's jaw tightened. "He's been identified. His name is all over everything. The Tribune ran a piece. He's a CEO, private equity offices on LaSalle Street." She paused. "He sent me a text." Vivian turned to look at her. "What did he send you?" 3 words. Isabella said, "I am sorry." Silence. "That's all," Vivian said. "That's all." Vivian looked forward again. The city moved past the windows. She pressed her lips together once. "What did you reply?" "I didn't," Isabella said. "I didn't know what you would want me to say." The silence that followed was the kind that has weight and texture, the kind that is doing real work inside the person who is holding it. "Nothing," Vivian said finally. "Don't reply." Isabella glanced at her. "Are you sure? Because I spoke with Professor Williams. She teaches tort law, and she said the footage alone constitutes—" "Isabella." Vivian's voice was gentle but absolute. "I did not come to New York to spend your graduation week in a lawyer's office." "I know, but—" "I came to watch you walk across a stage," Vivian said. "I came to see you in that cap and gown. I came to sit in the front row with your mother and your Uncle Philip, who will probably cry more than anyone despite pretending he won't. And I came to take 100 photographs I will put on my refrigerator and look at every single morning for the rest of my life." She paused. "That man's apology or his lawyers can wait until after graduation. Everything can wait until after graduation." Isabella drove. She gripped the wheel a little tighter than necessary. "You're not angry," she said. "How are you not angry?" Vivian considered this with what appeared to be genuine honesty. "I was angry," she said. "This morning in that airport, I was angry. I am not sure I showed it, but it was there." She looked at her hands in her lap. And then the captain stepped in. And then that woman, Sharon, and then the young gate agent, and then the plane, and then the coffee. She paused. "At some point today, the anger turned into something else. I am not sure what to call it yet." "What does it feel like?" Isabella asked. Vivian thought about it for a long moment. Like being seen, she said, after a long time of not being sure you were. Isabella did not say anything, but her hand came off the wheel and found her grandmother's hand, and she held it, and Vivian held back, and they drove through New York like that, hand in hand, as the city went about its indifferent, luminous night around them. Brent Langley landed at JFK soon after. He walked through the terminal with his carry-on behind him and his phone already off airplane mode. And it took approximately moments for the notifications to start arriving with enough volume to become genuinely alarming. He stopped in the terminal corridor. He stood still. He read. The Tribune article had been shared by 4 major news aggregators. A cable network had run a segment during their evening broadcast. A former airline employee had given a quote to an AP reporter describing the incident as one of the most egregious displays of passenger misconduct she had seen in many years. The hashtag with his name was trending in Illinois and had broken into the national trending list. His company's Yelp page, which he had not looked at in some time, because why would he, had received new reviews in the last while. He did not read any of them. His voicemail had many messages. He listened to 2 and stopped. One was a reporter. One was his accountant calling to ask in a carefully neutral tone if Brent was aware that a few of his investors had reached out with questions. He called Wesley. "Tell me something good," Brent said. "Sarah Kim wants to see you first thing tomorrow morning," Wesley said. "She says the footage is bad, but it's not criminal. There's a distinction between assault and battery in Illinois, and she thinks—" "Wesley," I said, "tell me something good." A pause. "Your Delta miles were credited to your account." Brent pressed his palm against his forehead. "What about Harrison?" "He wants to meet for breakfast tomorrow, early, his office building downstairs, the restaurant on the first floor." Wesley hesitated. "He called again recently. He sounded—" "Brent, he sounded tired. Not angry, tired, which I think means he's already decided something and he's sorry about it." Brent understood what that meant. He had been in enough boardrooms to know the difference between the anger that could be argued down and the sorrow that had already arrived at its conclusion. Harrison tired meant the board had talked. Harrison tired meant the talk had not gone in Brent's favor. Harrison tired meant tomorrow's breakfast was not a strategy session. It was a transition conversation. "He's going to ask me to step back," Brent said. Wesley was quiet. "Say it, Wesley." "I think he's going to ask you to step back," Wesley said. "Temporarily, until this settles. The optics of—" "I know the optics," Brent said. "I created the optics." He exhaled. "Fine, I'll be there early." He ended the call. He looked around the terminal at the movement, the people, the constant purposeful flow of a world that did not stop because one man in it was having the worst day of his life. And he felt, underneath the exhaustion and the damage control and the very real fear about tomorrow morning, something sharp and clarifying cutting through all of it. He took out his phone. He opened the text thread with the number he did not know, the one that had signed itself, Isabella Caldwell. His 3-word message sat there at the bottom of the thread, delivered unanswered. He stared at it, then he started typing. Not 3 words this time. He typed for some minutes straight, standing in the middle of JFK, people moving around him. And when he was done, he read it back once and did not change anything, because if he changed anything, he would talk himself out of sending it. He pressed send. The message read, "Miss Caldwell, I know this message is unwelcome, and I understand if you don't read it. I am not writing to ask for anything. I don't expect your forgiveness, and I'm not asking for it. I want to say clearly that what I did this morning was wrong. I grabbed your grandmother's arm because I was angry, and I felt entitled to something I had no right to, and I did it without thinking about her as a person. That is the truth of it. The whole morning is the truth of it. I don't know your grandmother, but I watched her hold her ground against me in that airport with more dignity than I have shown anyone in years, and she deserved none of what I put her through. I am sorry. Not for the consequences to me, for what I did to her. I hope she gets to see you graduate. He put the phone in his pocket. He picked up his carry-on. He walked toward the exit. The car was waiting outside. He got in. He sat back. He watched the lights of New York through the window as they pulled into traffic. And he thought about Vivian's voice. Calm, unhurried, entirely undefeated. And about his mother's voice, thin and tired in a Cincinnati hospital room, saying, "Be good, Brent. Just be good." He was going to have a very difficult morning. He was going to sit across from Harrison Klein and listen to words he did not want to hear. He was going to meet with Sarah Kim and work through the legal exposure of a moment he could not undo. He was going to face the board and the investors and the reporters and the long, uncomfortable unwinding of a reputation he had spent years building and minutes destroying. He knew all of that. But underneath all of it, underneath the fear and the damage and the very specific loneliness of a man who had built a life out of winning and was now sitting alone in a car, having lost something he could not buy back, there was a question, small and honest and not going anywhere. What kind of man do you want to be on the other side of this? He did not have an answer yet, but for the first time in a very long time, he was asking the question. And asking it, he knew, was where everything either ended or began. The Italian restaurant near Columbia was small and warm and smelled like garlic bread and red wine. And the particular comfort of a place that has been feeding people for years and knows exactly what it is doing. Isabella and Vivian took a corner table, a real corner table, with a wall on two sides and a candle between them. And the waiter brought bread without being asked, and Vivian pulled off a piece and ate it with the directness of someone who has not eaten a real meal since early that morning. "Tell me about the thesis," Vivian said. Isabella blinked. "What, your thesis? The one you've been working on since September? The one you called me about at midnight in October when you thought you had the wrong argument, and then called me again in the early morning when you realized you had the right one?" Vivian looked at her steadily. "Tell me about it." Isabella looked at her grandmother for a long moment. Then she started talking. She talked about her thesis, constitutional protections in administrative law, the specific argument she had built, the professor who had challenged it, and the way the challenge had ultimately made it stronger. She talked about the moot court competition in February, where she had won all 3 rounds and then lost the final on a procedural technicality that still made her stomach clench when she thought about it. She talked about the job offer from the firm in D.C. that she had not fully decided on yet. The one that would mean leaving New York, leaving her apartment, leaving Brooke and the familiar geography of the life she had built here. Vivian listened to all of it with the focused, unhurried attention of a woman who has always understood that listening is not passive, that it is its own kind of gift, that the deepest form of love is sometimes simply staying present while someone says everything they need to say. The food arrived, they ate. They talked about Isabella's mother, about Uncle Philip, about the cousin in Seattle who had just had a baby, about the farmhouse in Cedar Falls, where Vivian still lived alone and still kept a garden and still drove herself to the grocery store every week because the independence mattered. And she intended to keep it for as long as she possibly could. At some point, Isabella's phone buzzed. She looked at the screen. She went very still. "What is it?" Vivian asked. Isabella turned the phone toward her grandmother without saying anything. Vivian read Brent Langley's message. She read it slowly, all the way through once. Then she set the phone back on the table between them and was quiet. "Isabella," she said after a moment. "Yeah." "Don't reply tonight," Vivian said. "Let him sit with it." Isabella nodded slowly. "And tomorrow?" Vivian looked at the candle between them. The flame was very steady in the still air of the restaurant, burning straight and clean. "Tomorrow," she said, "I'm going to watch you graduate. That is what tomorrow is for." Isabella looked at her grandmother across the small table in the warm light and thought about what it had taken to get this woman here. The early alarm, the long wait in the delayed terminal, the man with his leather bag and his loud voice and his hand on her arm, the canceled flight, the first-class seat that was a kindness from a young gate agent who had understood without being told that some things needed to be made right. The flight, the arrivals terminal, the bruise under the sleeve, all of it, every piece of it, and here she was, eating bread in a restaurant in New York the night before her granddaughter's graduation, talking about a garden in Cedar Falls, and a thesis on administrative law, and a job offer in D.C. that had not been decided yet. "Grandma," Isabella said. "Yes, I need you to know something." Vivian looked at her. "Everything I am," Isabella said, and her voice was steady even though her eyes were not. "Everything I worked for, everything I'm going to do, I learned how to want it from watching you. I learned how to hold on from watching you. Every time I wanted to quit, I thought about you and I didn't quit." She stopped. "I just need you to know that." The restaurant moved around them. Glasses clinked somewhere. A couple laughed 2 tables over. The waiter passed quietly and did not interrupt. Vivian reached across the table and covered Isabella's hand with her own. The left hand, the one that trembled, resting over Isabella's young, strong one. "I know," Vivian said. "I've always known." The graduation was the next morning. The auditorium held many people, and it was full before the ceremony. The kind of full that has a sound of its own. The collective exhale of families who have been waiting for this day and cannot quite believe it is here. Lauren sat in the 3rd row with a tissue already in her hand, which she was holding in her lap, with the determined composure of a woman who had decided she was not going to cry until the moment she saw her daughter's face, at which point all bets were off. Uncle Philip sat beside her, with his arms crossed and his jaw set and his eyes already suspiciously bright. Exactly as Vivian had predicted. Vivian sat between them. She had worn her good coat, the navy one with the pearl buttons that she had bought for occasions that deserved it. She had pinned her hair neatly. She had put her best handbag in her lap, both hands folded over it, and she had looked at the program and found Isabella's name printed in it, Isabella Catherine Caldwell, Juris Doctor. And she had pressed her lips together and held that feeling in her chest. That enormous, years-built feeling. And she had not said anything, because there was nothing to say. Some things are beyond words. This was one of them. The processional began. The graduates filed in, many of them, in black caps and gowns, and Vivian looked at each face as they passed with the focus of a woman who had been looking for one face in particular since the moment she arrived. And then she saw her. Isabella was tall like her grandfather. She held herself like him, too. Straight, certain, the posture of someone who has decided who they are and is not looking for permission. She was scanning the rows as she walked, looking for her family. And the moment she found them, the moment her eyes landed on the third row and found her grandmother's face in the navy coat, she stumbled. Just one step, just enough that the person behind her put a hand out briefly before she caught herself. And then she smiled, huge and real and entirely unpracticed. The smile of a young woman who has worked for every inch of this moment and knows it and is not pretending otherwise. Vivian raised one hand, just a small wave, the left hand trembling quietly, rising in the warm auditorium air. Isabella laughed. She actually laughed right there in the processional. A short, bright sound that the people around her smiled at without knowing why. And then she kept walking into the row, into her seat, into the rest of her life. The ceremony lasted some time. When Isabella's name was called, Isabella Catherine Caldwell, the applause from the third row was loud enough that the dean glanced up briefly from the podium with a small smile before moving on. Lauren was crying. Philip had not moved his arms, but his jaw was no longer set. It had loosened into something that looked, if you knew him, exactly like a man who was crying in the way men who have decided not to cry actually cry. Vivian did not cry. She clapped. Both hands steady and sure, the left hand and the right one. And she watched her granddaughter walk across that stage and take that diploma and shake that hand. And she felt every year of her life in that moment. The farm, the 3 children, the husband she had buried, the diagnosis she had outlasted, the airport seat she had refused to give up, the bruise under her sleeve, all of it, and she held it, all of it, not as weight, but as evidence. Evidence that she had lived, that she had done it right, that here in this auditorium, in this young woman walking across this stage, was proof that the way you carry yourself through the world matters, that it passes from hand to hand, generation to generation, quietly and without announcement, like a hand covering a trembling one at a restaurant table the night before everything changes. After the ceremony in the courtyard outside, when the crowd had pressed in and the photographs had been taken and Lauren had cried again and Philip had finally admitted he had cried and Isabella had her diploma in one hand and her grandmother's hand in the other, a woman approached them. She was in her early 30s in a blazer with a notebook and the particular focused energy of a journalist on a specific errand. "Mrs. Caldwell," she said. Vivian looked at her. "I'm with the Tribune. I've been covering the story about the incident at O'Hare. I wondered if you had any comment. Anything you'd like to say to the people who've been following this?" Isabella stepped forward slightly, but Vivian put a hand on her arm gently. "The way you stop someone you love from doing something that isn't necessary," and looked at the journalist. She thought for a moment. "Tell them," Vivian said, "that I made my flight." The journalist looked at her. "Is that all?" "That's all," Vivian said. She turned back to her family, to Isabella and Lauren and Philip, standing in the New York afternoon light with their faces open and warm and hers. She looked at the diploma in Isabella's hand, at the name printed on it, at the life it represented. She squeezed Isabella's hand once, firm and sure. And Vivian Ellen Caldwell, elderly survivor of things that would have undone most people and dignified in the face of things designed to make her small, walked forward into that bright afternoon with her family around her, and her head up and her left hand trembling at her side, like it always did, like it always would. Not a sign of weakness, not evidence of decline, but simply proof of a body that had carried this woman through everything the world had thrown at her and was still steadily and without apology carrying her now. She had been told to move. She had not moved, and the world in the end had moved around her instead, just as she had always known it would. Just as she had always, quietly and without drama, refused to believe otherwise. That was the whole story, and it was. One of the most valuable lessons in life is that true strength does not always shout, fight, or demand attention. Sometimes, true strength looks like quiet dignity, like an elderly woman refusing to surrender her seat, her self-respect, and her humanity to someone who believed power meant being louder, richer, or more aggressive. In a world where so many people confuse importance with entitlement, this story reminds us that character is revealed not in moments of comfort, but in moments of pressure. Brent had status, confidence, and a powerful voice, but Vivian had something far greater: grace, courage, and a lifetime of knowing her worth. That is the lesson we should all carry into our own lives. Never measure people by their age, their appearance, or their silence, because some of the strongest souls are the ones who speak softly and stand firmly. And never stay silent when someone is being mistreated, because sometimes one act of cruelty can wound deeply, but one act of courage, kindness, or support can restore faith in humanity. Life has a way of exposing who we really are, and in the end, respect will always matter more than pride, compassion will always outlast arrogance, and dignity will always leave the deepest mark. If this story touched your heart, let it remind you to choose kindness, to defend those who are vulnerable, and to carry yourself with honor no matter who is watching. Tell me in the comments, what would you have done if you had been at that gate? And if you believe stories like this still matter, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you never miss another powerful story.